Videos like these are made possible by viewers like you, who support the channel through Patreon, channel memberships, and stream donations, as well as everyone who plays on my rebalance servers at badweaponrehab.tf, and they're also made possible by the sponsor of today's video.
Oh. Ah! Come and get it, you wizard ghost, commie, scum-sucking maggot! What's that?
You know, for being in the Tank Buster set, the Black Box isn't the best for dealing with tanks, is it?
Holy Mary Mother of Joseph, this is mine now.
And it can be, soldier. All you have to do is download War Thunder, the sponsor of today's video. It's a vehicle combat game available for PC, Xbox, and PlayStation that's totally free to play. Just like your game, soldier.
I am in a tank!
That's right, soldier. There are a wide selection of tanks to choose from in the game. And not only that, but planes, helicopters, and ships, giving you a selection of over 2,500 vehicles to choose from for all different forms of combat. But not just any combat where you whittle down a health bar. The damage dealt to vehicles is highly detailed and personalized to each vehicle, and you can use the X-ray view to see exactly what kind of damage you're dealing. And speaking of personalized, you can also customize your vehicles to your liking with all kinds of different skins and decorations. The biplanes of classic warfare and the battleships of the modern day are all at your disposal to customize and battle however you want.
This is what God would use to shoot somebody.
But that's not all. If you're a new player, or someone returning after 6 months or more, all you have to do is follow the link in the description or pinned comment below, and you'll receive a limited time bonus package, including multiple premium vehicles, 100,000 silver lions, 7 days of a premium account, and the exclusive Eagle of Valor vehicle decoration.
Screaming Eagles!
Exactly. So check the links down below, and go check out War Thunder. And thanks again for sponsoring today's video. Alright, can I have that back now? I need it for the next ad raid.
No, mine.
Wait, soldiers, we can't kill robots with that!
Let's give this suit cat hell!
Oh, I guess you can. Huh. Well, you learn something new about War Thunder every day. The Black Box. The Bad Box. The Crutch Box. And who could forget, the Box. I think it's safe to say that amongst soldier primaries, the Black Box doesn't exactly have the most outstanding reputation. I often see it categorized into one of two stereotypes. Brand new soldier who just unlocked it and thinks it must be a straight upgrade because it heals you, and the biggest pussy-ass loser coward you have ever seen in your entire life, who despite 2 of his weapons healing him, inexplicably has a pocket medic on top of that, and who will only ever engage you when he inevitably gets a random crit. All this bad rep just because of up to 20 health on hit, and 1 less rocket in the clip. By TF2 standards, that is a remarkably restrained weapon design that hasn't really changed all that much since it was added, and by your average Redditor's weapon balance standards, well, there's a lot less text, that's for sure. So what makes the Black Box so maligned for what's ultimately such a simple weapon design? Well, those 2 little lines of text end up meaning quite a lot in the grand scheme of things, and end up having a bigger impact than you might think. See, having lots of rockets at your disposal is kind of important unless you're launching wet paper towels at your enemies like our good friend the Liberty Launcher. Rocket jumping is a core facet of just about any experienced soldier's toolkit. So 1 less rocket means that's just less rocket jumps that you can perform. Let's look at this from the perspective of a pretty common scenario. The basic dive bomb. Easy stuff here. The soldier leaps into the air with rocket number 1, and most classes in the game will fall prey to 2 close range rockets. With that task complete, the soldier uses his 4th rocket to jump away back to safety. Very simple stuff. However, with the Black Box, that story ends quite differently. See, on the one hand, getting health back on hit is really nice for bombing, because it means you heal off whatever you lost from rocket jumping. Or you can tank some extra damage during close range fights where you might take some self-splash damage. But on the other hand, having a smaller clip size leaves you a lot more vulnerable once the bombing maneuver has been completed, since you now have to spend time reloading when you didn't before. Despite the gun's focus on survivability, this situation is just too risky, and so most soldiers using the Black Box simply opt not to do it and consign themselves to the life of a ground walker, watching their companions soar through the air like majestic birds while they whip a free-to-play heavy who keeps moving the wrong way to get to the front lines faster. Because that's another thing. This doesn't just apply to bombing. It can also apply to rollouts. Some rollouts require you to use every rocket in the clip in order to make it to your destination as fast as possible, or even just to make it at all. The black box doesn't facilitate this, vastly limiting the amount of rollouts you can effectively perform. This ends up creating kind of a negative feedback loop, where the gun's general design discourages you from rocket jumping, which discourages you from wearing the gunboats to aid in your rocket jumping, which further discourages you from rocket jumping even when it might be beneficial. And this is what ends up creating one of the biggest stereotypes surrounding the black box: its status as a crutch weapon. This is something the weapon has always had to deal with and has never quite been able to shake. Rocket jumping is challenging, and for more complex jumps especially that aren't just basic pencil jumps, there's a pretty huge learning curve to it. So for a lot of newer soldiers who can't or just don't rocket jump, then hey, why not take the extra health during fights and not have all that much of a downside? That's not to say that you can't or shouldn't ever rocket jump with the black box, it's just that it's basically always going to be worse than with the other launchers, because you're either more vulnerable or less mobile overall. And this ends up greatly benefiting the players who aren't going to take advantage of the mechanic in the first place. Hence the negative stigma surrounding the player's skill level. And that lack of mobility also ends up feeding into the biggest annoyance that a lot of people have with black box soldiers: passivity. As the illustrious H-Bomber guy once said in his famous video on Dark Souls 2, moderation is a delusion people invent to describe themselves. There is no moderation between right and left, just like there is no moderation between correct and incorrect. Wait, no, that's the wrong quote. Huh. He did say that though. Passivity is dumb and stinky and not fun and bad, and also don't use shields for some reason. Because the smaller clip size discourages aggressive plays to such an extreme degree, this makes the black box feel like a much more defensively oriented rocket launcher. You can't take on larger team fights without lots of reloading, you can't aggressively dive bomb without immediately losing the biggest advantage your rocket launcher gives you right afterwards, and your smaller clip size makes you less than ideal for dealing with an engineer's nest. And overall, you're not the best suited for uber pushes. This all leads to a rocket launcher that feels much more suited to a defensive playstyle. Kinda strange then that it pairs with the battalion's backup in its set, which is arguably at its best when used in an offensive push, but never mind that. Being in a defensive position is where the gun feels most at home. You can fire off some spam shots, heal off whatever chip damage you do wind up taking, and stay nice and cozy in your little corner of the map where you don't have to worry about all those pesky downsides that come with a smaller clip size. And in the event that you really need to get into a fight and not just get spam kills with all the random crits you inevitably get, you pop your trusty secondary, the Conqueror. The weapon that black box soldiers the world over have universally agreed upon having much better synergy with their primary than the backpack in its own set. Heal back all of your HP with a single rocket, shut down their pushes, and remain utterly unkillable while using the speed boost to run away from anyone who can actually properly fight you. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of jeers and hisses for literally every black box soldier. Okay, I know it's rich for the guy who plays the class that lives on the backline and shoots people from far away to call people out for playing the game passively, but this is the general consensus that I've seen regarding black box and especially conch box soldiers. No one likes fighting people who refuse to leave their position of relative safety, and in defensive situations, especially where you have to come to them, that can be especially irritating since they're always going to have the advantage. Now that's not to say this is necessarily a balance issue or that this is overpowered. This strategy is obviously not foolproof, it has its counters.
Of all the things there, the fucking fan of war?
Leaving yourself without a shotgun means that the only one who's going to be healing from your rockets is the ridiculously cracked pyro on the enemy team, who's devoted his entire life to making soldier mains miserable beyond comprehension by unlocking the power to simply see at a higher frame rate than you, and you might be regretting picking the Conqueror over the backup once you see the enemy team's sniper, who doesn't really care about how much health you get back from a rocket. But that does bring up the topic of additional secondary weapons. A lot of black box soldiers will automatically gravitate towards the Conqueror because, yeah, the synergy that the weapons have is undeniable. You can heal an insane amount of damage by stacking both of the lifesteal effects at once. The smaller clip size doesn't matter as much since the Conqueror charges its effects much faster than the other banners, and the speed boost gives you even more survivability on top of what you already have as a naturally tanky class with double stacked lifesteal and the ability to disengage from a fight with a single rocket jump. On paper, you could use these effects to actually make up for your aggressive weaknesses since your survivability is much higher. but in practice, the Conqueror kind of encourages you to hang back and play passively to charge your boost up and save it for situations where people get a bit too close to your little corner of the map. Or if the enemy team is making a push in general, so that your teammates can get the Conqueror's benefits on top of yourself getting them. Even the passive health regen seems to encourage this behavior. The healing gets better the longer you don't take damage, meaning staying out of direct fights as often as possible is actively encouraged by this weapon pair. But the Conqueror is far from the only option. Hell, the other backpacks still work pretty well with the Black Box too. The Battalion's backup is just an insanely strong weapon to begin with. It gives you more survivability right out of the gate in the form of more base health, and while the buff is active, any health you recover from the Black Box is effectively boosted by 35%, as if you weren't tanky enough already.
Oh, nice fucking crits! Yeah, nice random crits, asshole!
And with the buff banner, you ensure that you're able to get the most out of your healing with every single rocket you fire, since you'll be able to cross that 90 damage threshold for max healing a lot easier. And you're able to make up for your lack of DPS due to the clip size penalty by dishing out extra damage on top of that. Also, the Black Box just shits out crits for some reason, so you basically charge up all the banners for free. However, I think some of the best options to use with the Black Box are the shotguns. Seeing a Black Box soldier whip out a shotgun is one of the quickest ways to tell that he isn't screwing around and is here to get the job done. In the middle of combat, you can really feel that lack of a fourth rocket. I know I've brought it up a lot in this video, but as someone who hasn't used the Black Box a lot, it's something that really stood out to me just how impactful this downside was. I ended up feeling that drawback a lot more than I expected. But with a shotgun, you can easily make up for that lost damage while still keeping the benefits of the Black Box. Now imagine that bomb from earlier where instead of needing to reload another rocket to jump away from the nearby enemy, you just blow a hole through his torso with 12 gauge buckshot. So you still get to recover from your rocket jump by killing a guy, and you get the added benefits of further protection and easy damage against reflect happy pyros. And speaking of recovering health, that is the main draw of the weapon, so it's definitely worth talking about in detail. Now the Black Box will restore health based on the amount of damage dealt by your rocket, up to a maximum of 20 health if your rocket deals over 90 damage, so base damage for a rocket. This doesn't just apply to a single enemy either. If you shoot a rocket in between 3 people, dealing 30 damage to each of them, that still adds up to 90 total damage and gives you the full health gain. Being able to restore 10% of your base health with a single shot, and 30% of your base health with a full clip certainly has its upsides. It may not seem like much, but consider how many weapons in TF2 deal damage in ranges of around 100, which is obviously a very important damage threshold for Soldier in particular, since it means that 2 attacks from many primary weapons will be enough to kill him. 2 grenades, 2 scattergun meat shots, a headshot followed by a body shot, hell, 2 ambassador headshots. The Black Box often has a reputation as a crutch weapon. This is to say, a weapon that helps newer players, but enforces bad habits and hinders more experienced ones. But this is a situation where the Black Box has a straight up benefit over the other rocket launchers. Because if you get into a fight with a demo man and he 2-taps you with his pipes, you kinda just die even if you manage to get a shot or 2 in on him. But with the Black Box, that turns the odds massively in your favor by forcing him to hit a 3rd pipe if you so much as manage to tickle him with splash damage, effectively giving you the same buff as the 2 passive banner upsides without even needing to use those weapons in the first place. And the smaller clip size means that you still have to be on point with your aim, which is a scenario that requires more skill from players, benefiting those who can land their directs to deal as much damage as possible, as quickly as possible. This means that the Black Box has a bit of a give and take in terms of crowd control, being able to heal to full more easily, while not being able to put out as much damage. But it's extremely effective in 1v1 encounters, especially since the downside in those situations won't matter as much, since the only enemy likely to tank 3 rockets to the face is a heavy, or maybe a jacked up Islander Demo Knight with a Targe. I end up finding it really interesting just how well these 2 stats end up balancing each other out. It's not some random assortment of stats where you just have a downside for the sake of it. This is actually very well balanced. And while the Black Box may not be the most fun weapon in the world to fight, especially with the Conqueror, it can still be decently fun to use. I never really cared much for the Black Box before making this video, but giving it a real chance has definitely made me see the upsides. There's plenty of tense moments where you just barely manage to survive thanks to the healing and make a getaway, and I think those end up being more fun than the moments where you end up craving a rocket feeling annoying. I think expanding the list of secondaries I ended up using positively impacted my feelings towards the weapon, Pairing it with the shotguns especially is just a lot of fun, and getting those maxed out heals with every buff banner shot was especially satisfying. So do I think the black box is a crutch? Maybe a little bit, but I think it's easier to say that it can be used as a crutch. While skilled soldiers are still able to make the most out of the upsides, without feeling like stinky coward babies who don't ever engage with you unless it's on their extremely stacked terms. That being said, I don't think this video is going to convince many conch box soldiers to try out something new. It's also not going to take away all of the random crits. Like, is this a crit bucket thing? Like, you stay alive for longer while you're just pooping out damage so you get ass loads of crits? Look, I don't care what mechanics are behind it, just make it stop, okay? Just make it stop! And don't forget to check out today's sponsor, War Thunder. Check the links below, and thanks again to them for sponsoring today's video. The missing texture rocket launcher. Oh, it's not missing anymore. It's here. I mean, it's good, but no, now it's missing. Perfect.